Content warning. The Noir Casebook True Crime Stories presents Darkness in Detroit. Welcome to the Noir Casebook, where we unravel the tangled threads of crime and delve into the minds behind the madness. I'm Dana, your guide through the shadows. Tonight, we're stepping into the murky depths of a case that spans continents and leaves a trail of devastation. This is the story of John Eric Armstrong, a man whose dark deeds shocked the world. John Eric Armstrong was born on November 23, 1973, in New Bern, North Carolina. His early years were far from idyllic. Armstrong's father was abusive, subjecting him to physical and sexual violence before abandoning the family altogether. Then, in 1978, tragedy struck when his infant brother Michael died unexpectedly. This series of traumas pushed young John into a spiral of despair. By his teenage years, he had already attempted suicide and struggled to find a sense of normalcy. In 1992, Armstrong found a semblance of stability when he enlisted in the U.S. Navy. Serving aboard the USS Nimitz, he traveled to ports around the world: Singapore, Thailand, and Hong Kong, to name a few. But this wasn't just a career move. It became the backdrop for a series of heinous crimes. Armstrong would later confess to killing sex workers during his deployments, exploiting the anonymity of life at sea. In 1999, after a 7-year career, Armstrong received an honorable discharge from the Navy. He then settled in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, enrolling at Schoolcraft College, and seemed to be building a quiet life. But beneath the surface, his dark impulses were simmering. Between late 1999 and early 2000, Detroit police discovered the bodies of multiple female sex workers, all victims of strangulation. Aside from their profession, the victims shared other common factors. They were all in their 20s to 40s, and their bodies were found in similar types of locations, such as secluded or industrial areas. The crime scenes were relatively clean of physical evidence beyond the DNA found on the victims, suggesting a calculated and methodical approach. All the victims were strangled, which is a hallmark method of control and domination often seen in serial killings. The use of strangulation also indicated a hands-on personal method of killing, which is significant in understanding the psychology of the offender. The absence of significant defensive wounds on some victims suggested that the perpetrator might have gained their trust or incapacitated them quickly. The combination of victimology, modus operandi, and forensic evidence painted a clear picture of a single predator at work. Armstrong's undoing came in April 2000. A woman escaped his attempt to strangle her and went straight to the police. Her description of Armstrong led to his arrest, and once in custody, the floodgates opened. Armstrong confessed to the murders of 5 women in Detroit: Wendy Jordan, Monica Johnson, Kelly Hood, Robin Brown, and Rosemarie Felt. Armstrong approached his victims under the guise of being a client, which allowed him to gain their trust and isolate them without raising suspicion. By targeting sex workers, he exploited their isolated and high-risk lifestyles, knowing they might be less likely to resist or raise suspicion when approached by a potential client. The physical evidence from these crime scenes became central to identifying the perpetrator. Investigators collected DNA evidence from the bodies of the victims, including biological material such as semen. This evidence was preserved and later tested for matches. But Armstrong's confessions didn't stop there. He claimed responsibility for killings in Washington State, Hawaii, Hong Kong, and Thailand. Authorities, however, couldn't substantiate all his claims. After Armstrong's arrest in April 2000, authorities obtained a DNA sample from him. This sample was compared to the DNA evidence collected from the victims. This scientific evidence was crucial in confirming his physical presence at the crime scenes and implicating him in the crimes. DNA provided a definitive, objective link between Armstrong and the murders. While his confessions were significant, DNA evidence eliminated any doubts about his involvement, especially since confessions alone can sometimes be contested in court. In addition to the DNA evidence, the survivor who escaped Armstrong's attack identified him as her assailant. Together, these elements created a powerful case against him. When Armstrong was first charged, he initially pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. However, as the case progressed, the weight of the evidence, including DNA linking him to the victims and his confessions during interrogation, became overwhelming. His legal team likely considered the strength of the prosecution's case in shaping his defense strategy. The trial was swift and damning. Armstrong changed his plea during the legal proceedings. This change of plea was likely a strategic decision by his legal team, possibly to avoid a harsher sentence or to acknowledge the overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution. Armstrong was convicted of multiple counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Today, he resides at the G. Robert Cotton Correctional Facility in Michigan. His case remains a chilling reminder of how trauma and unchecked impulses can manifest in unimaginable ways. Armstrong's crimes have been the subject of various media portrayals, including documentaries and true crime series, reflecting public fascination with serial offenders and the psychological underpinnings of their actions. What makes Armstrong's story particularly haunting is the duality of his life. To his peers, he was a sailor, a student, a husband. But to his victims, he was a predator lurking in the shadows. His case also raises unsettling questions about the challenges of tracking transient killers, those who exploit mobility to evade detection. Armstrong's history of childhood abuse, coupled with his transient lifestyle during military service, may have contributed to his violent behavior. His choice of victims, primarily vulnerable sex workers, suggests a predatory pattern exploiting individuals on the margins of society. Thank you for joining me tonight on the Noir Casebook. If you found this story compelling, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more journeys through our casebook. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your wits sharp. The shadows are always watching.